Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to First Cut. This is our Barbenheimer Aftermath box office review, whatever you want to call it. We are talking about the box office, the state of movies, as we like to say on this channel right here. I'm with RB3 and Sabrina in the house. Obviously, they did their Barbie review, but we want to talk about the success and the aftermath of this explosive box office weekend that we just experienced here in the US, but also globally. This was an absolute phenomenon. Four movies, four movie theaters. What a time to be a movie fan with this type of films that we've gotten with these two films. I'm looking at the numbers right now, and I'm still blown away because according to Deadline that I'm currently reading, it's 160 million opening weekend for Barbie, which, as you guys have read before, is the biggest for a female director. It's the biggest of the year domestically. It's so many different records that I could possibly name. Obviously, the two biggest back-to-backs when it comes to both combined. And then when Oppenheimer, we're seeing 80 million or 80.5 so far domestically. And obviously globally, I'm assuming it's going to be a lot more than that as well. So we're seeing absolute domination of Barbie. Sabrina, this is your moment. How are you feeling?
Well, one, very validated. I know I was like projecting pretty high or like predicting that it would kind of be like maybe hit 130. I know we talked about maybe like 140 or higher, but the absolute behemoth that it became makes me really happy, just first and foremost, because I feel like women are kind of underserved at the theater. I feel like they don't realize how women will run out to go see a movie that we're really, really excited about, especially one that is as incredible as this film was. In my opinion, this is among one of my favorite movies of all time, maybe. Like, I know it's very early to say, and it might be that recency bias, but I know that just like Lady Bird and just like Little Women, I'm going to be revisiting this one for the rest of my life. So then to actually see that reflected in the numbers for Greta Gerwig and everybody who worked on this film to see their art, see their film have this much just like success when it comes to casual movie going audiences, huge film fans like us. I don't know, it's just wonderful. It makes me super happy.
RB3, how about you, man? Specifically about Barbie.
Hey, it's just like I said in our review. It's like Black Panther for women. You know what I mean? Like, or to see everybody strutting out in pink, like just everybody doing their thing. And I definitely think it was a needed time in the box office because there wasn't, like you said, Sabrina, not a lot of female serving films. Some would argue maybe Elementals, like earlier in the year, was like the closest thing. And then of course like they had No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence. That was really funny as well. And then Joyride too, but again, those were not blockbusters, so it was really good seeing a film that put a lot of women and honestly a lot of men in the forefront too. Like there was a lot of good male actors in there that I feel like they just did a really good job crossing all demographics, just like the Barbie trailer implied. If you love Barbie, if you hate Barbie, this was the movie for you. So it kind of played to all audiences in a really nice way.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, RB3, because we're seeing generations, right? Where you're seeing girls as young as maybe 6 or 7 and ladies as old as 70 seeing this movie with their families. And that's the kind of range that we're looking at when it comes to this movie because of the four quadrant nature, but because of also the cross generational nature of the directing style of Greta Gerwig, where she's able to tap into some really adult themes. And by adult themes, I mean like existential feminine themes compared to funny, silly moments that maybe a little girl would laugh at and maybe not have to think too hard about. So I do think there's a lot of artistry in that, if that makes sense, to make it a four quadrant picture. But making it an absolute phenomenon is something that I don't know. I don't want to say this is something that's surprising, to be honest. I mean, I think I predicted, what did I say? Like 120 or 125? Like I do feel like this was something that based off the marketing, is this as much as you expected, Sabrina? Is this something that's surprising to you? Or do you feel like this is a moment that maybe a lot of people are going to be like, this is insane. I've never seen this much money for a movie that I thought was going to make like 75.
Yeah, and I mean, even 75 would still be a
Yeah.
win. I mean, that would still be a success, but yeah, how crazy and how out there. I think the first thing that made me realize was, again, like when I was going to get my tickets at AMC and everything was already sold out, and I joined right the minute they were available. I hopped on. I was trying to get it for my A-list friends and other people like that. And it was a mission. It was really, really tough. So I think that was the first thing where I'm like, this is going to be even bigger than anyone could have imagined. And years ago, like if you told me, even around the release of Lady Bird or Little Women, if you were like, yeah, Greta Gerwig is going to be the person that has the biggest summer movie of 2023, and especially looking at what's come out, you know, movies like The Flash or other things like that, the fact that this not just surpassed those, but it just like absolutely exceeded everything that came before it and what is to come for the rest of summer is crazy. And like I said, it's a cultural moment. It's just a celebration of like women's joy, women's whole lives. We see the moment in the film where, you know, she's talking to the old woman on the bench, or we see the montage of women. We see all these different moments in our lives reflected on screen, whether we've lived them yet or not. And I just think, yeah, if you're 6 years old and you're watching this for the first time, you might not understand. You know, I think the ideas and the way Greta Gerwig handles the themes, it's like, it's pretty simplistic, I think, for a good reason. I think everybody, young, old, will find themselves able to kind of understand that. And so the 6-year-olds that are going to see it and are having a good time because it is so fun, it's so cute. The production design is incredible. I think they'll go revisit this film in a few years once they have a better understanding of like capitalism, existentialism. I know I would have felt that way at that time. So I just think it's a beautiful thing that has happened. And I think it's lightning in a bottle that we might not see again for a while, because it takes to have like every single thing covered in this film, all the themes dealt with the way that they had, to have everybody dressing up, going to the theater. It's packed. I've never seen any of my local AMCs packed like that, you know. I went to the Grove, I went to the Americana, Universal City Walk. Every single person is walking around in pink, men, women, children. And yeah, I just think we can all come together to sit here and celebrate women like this. Is just incredible.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a cultural memification, if that makes sense, where
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of memes coming from this movie that maybe we haven't experienced yet because we're still barely after the first weekend. So I think maybe
Well,
later
I
on
mean,
this week.
I think the memes are already coming in hot though. I mean, I think
I
they're
mean, they
already
are,
like,
but I think it's gonna be extra. I think people are gonna be doing the Ken number on TikTok and shit. Like I'm talking like that much. Like they're actually gonna memorize the dance moves. You know those
Oh,
kids.
I've already seen it. I've seen the
man.
dance
Really?
move,
Oh, I haven't.
the Dua
Okay.
Lipa one. Yeah, it's
Okay.
all over TikTok. So like, yeah, it's gonna continue, like you said, to come out even more as
Yeah.
time passes. But you know, I SNL, if they were going on, if the writer strike wasn't happening right now,
Yeah.
you know their asses would have already cooked up a skit
Yes.
on
Yeah.
this.
Even
And I,
though like it's a funny movie, I think it could stand on its own. Arbitrary, go ahead.
100%.
I mean, my favorite brand of memes are the Barbie Oppenheimer crossover memes when it's
Oh
like, I
yeah.
am become death, I am destroyer, but in the Barbie font. I think it's
Yeah.
hilarious. Or when it just is the last shot of Oppenheimer and it's like, oh, I guess I don't want to spoil the last line of Barbie, but it's just like they took the last frame from Oppenheimer and put the Barbie line on there.
Oh,
It's
that's funny.
hilarious. Like I just
That's
think
funny.
it's yeah, like every so I think like I think it's perfect. I think both of these movies show us like perfect kind of programming from each other because like
Yes.
you definitely have, you know, people are like in boyfriend girlfriend situations. You definitely have some, you know, probably like a boyfriend who's like probably like, oh, I really want to see Oppenheimer, and then girls like, oh, I really want to see Barbie. So then they go and do a double feature type of situation, and you end up getting both people end up doing two pretty good movies. I think Barbie's like definitely a lot more accessible. That's why it makes like
Yes.
way more money. But then definitely like I think the Barbie burn over effect to Oppenheimer is definitely apparent as well too, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, I really do feel like that's underrated, where there is a lot of I saw a lot of pink at my Oppenheimer screening.
Yeah, no,
And I was
same,
like,
yeah,
yo, what?
yeah.
But I'm assuming like it's a double feature kind of thing. But by pink, I mean like a lot of women in pink. Like it's as they bought like a ticket of 5 for Barbie and then a ticket of 5 for Oppenheimer. And I thought that was kind of funny, but I do feel like there's a slight crossover that could be happening as well. Even though, like you said, RB3, it's way more accessible. Barbie, I can't lie, man. Like once this movie hit the musical number, I was like, this is genius. It's absolutely genius. As soon as the kids started fighting in musical format, I was like, all right, we're in good hands here. We're watching history, fam. Is what I said out loud in my theater. Um, Absolutely hilarious movie, and I really do feel like it lives up and it's worthy of the box office that it made. And it shows Greta Gerwig's ability to balance the absolute scale of this film, because it was a higher budget than she's had previously, and the absolute scale of expectations that this movie had, because I do feel like it had quite a bit, especially after the marketing that Warner Brothers went through. So I do feel like Greta Gerwig especially is the hero, the star of this entire weekend, if I'm being completely honest, because I do feel like as much as Margot and Ryan Gosling killed it, I feel like her sensibilities were absolutely on spot. So shout out to Barbie, man. Shout out to
I definitely do think, I think there is a very to all of those points, you know, everybody is the creatives definitely deserve the credit. I definitely do think there are some good points being made online that Barbie is a 60-year-old like IP, you know what I mean? Like, so it is like already had a built-in marketing in and of itself. Like, so like I do love that it wasn't a success and was like an anomaly of its success, but it's still based on like a massively popular IP too. So like,
oh, make no doubt. But that's I think that's kind of harder though. I feel like you can fall into traps about being like making a very simplistic. I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, I think you even mentioned RB3. I saw that movie when I was growing up with Tyra Banks. Like, we could just see that again, and it'd be fun, and people would like it, and it'd probably make $100 million. But because it has existential themes, it has inside jokes, it has the Kendom aspect, the patriarchy, the whole, everything that she puts in there to make it a little bit more like pokey, like poking the audience to be like, hey, wake up, don't like just kind of fall asleep in a daze and just laugh, kind of like pay attention a little bit more, is what makes it that much more special besides the IP. Because if it's IP, you can just do a bunch of references and it'd be funny and you'd make $100 million. But that extra 60 to me is about her sensibility and her ability to balance.
Honestly, I still think if you just had like a normal Barbie movie, I don't think it would even make $100 million. I don't think we would have
maybe like
the situation that we do have. I think it really is just like the perfect blend of what they did with the marketing and the music, already popping off on stuff like TikTok. It's like they knew what they were doing, but also what they were pushing out is so good. It's not like the previous memes that we've had, like the gentle minions and other stuff that kind of became like TikTok trends. This really had just so much substance, and it was just so rich that, first of all, you want to go back for like repeat viewings. And also, like, I was someone who played with Barbie as a kid, but just a Barbie movie in itself would never excite me. I loved Barbies when I was young, but this film by this filmmaker, the second it was announced like Greta Gerwig is helming this, I'm excited to see what we have going on here, because I think I mentioned this in our review, but every single one of her films, it's like they speak to each other. The character of Joe in Little Women, the character of Lady Bird in Lady Bird, they all have quotes and different things that they talk about that are all really similar and really similar themes with themselves. So I think it's just a mixture of all of that that pushed this one over the edge. And I don't think it would be anywhere near, maybe even like 30 million opening weekend if it was just a normal Barbie movie. I don't think it would have hit this mark at all.
Yeah, I definitely hear what y'all are saying on that. I definitely also think like Lego movie open to like over $100 million open a weekend. Transformers open to the first Transformers over 150. Though. Yeah, no, but those are also like big IPs too, and big toy properties too. And listen, I 100% agree, because I also think like that's what makes Black Panther like stand up above like when it came out, right? Like if Black Panther would just normally came out, it would have been just a normal Marvel movie made like maybe 150 million worldwide opening weekend or something. But because it had Ryan Coogler and because it had Chadwick Boseman, because it had all those elements, it definitely went to the next level. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that to like hate on. I'm not saying that to hate on it. But I'm just saying, like, I love the fact that it's like non-superhero, not like an original, non-sequel thing of that nature. But it's also an IP too. So, and IP is the name of the game. So that's just like Hollywood in general. So, but
I feel like she was given the IP and she did the best she could, and she made the best out of it, because regardless, this movie was going to be made, right? I mean, this movie has been in development
and
forever.
Sabrina talked about how the different
Amy Schumer and Hathaway.
Yeah, and it probably would have been trash.
And it probably would have been pretty
As much
trash,
as
and it
I
probably would have made
appreciate both women, like y'all remember,
decent.
I had
Yeah,
Amy Schumer's Trainwreck as number 10 in my top 10
that's
when we
right.
were reflecting on the last
Oh,
decade. I don't like love Amy Schumer by chance, but I do find qualities in her that I think are super entertaining. Love Anne Hathaway, but I think a straightforward film about a Barbie or whatever just would not have hit the same place. Because you know, RB3, like you talk about Transformers and all of this stuff, it's like when we look at those demographics for those films, like women, even if you played with them as a kid, like I had Transformers and stuff like that. I was only ever interested in Transformers because it was something that I would go to the theater to see with my dad, especially for the first few films. After that, I totally fell off of it. Um, but yeah, it's more normalized. Like, just for an example, obviously, I live with my partner, Brandon. We have our separate bookshelves right next to each other. His bookshelf has an Obi-Wan Kenobi doll, an Anakin Skywalker, I guess I should say action figure, has all of those kinds of stuff, Funko Pops, all of that. If I had Barbies or other little like girly things kind of sitting on my shelves, like people would probably judge me a little bit, and it's just not normal. Like it's not so normalized as much as his are.
that's fair.
And I think the loyalty to something like Barbie doesn't exist, whereas the Transformers fan base, even prior to the films, you guys had like the cartoons and all this stuff. There's like more of a brand loyalty to something like Star Wars or Transformers than there is to a thing like Barbie, because we sit here and we criticize it. Honestly, prior to this movie, until I really sat down and like dove into what Barbie represents, like, because she was ahead of her time when she originally came out. Again, I think I mentioned, but like women couldn't have their own bank accounts or so many different situations. And you were able to go from, instead of playing with a baby doll, to an actual woman and have something to aspire to be, because this plastic Barbie is like a blank canvas that you can put whatever you want onto her. But then at the same time, she has this little waist, she has this, she has that, her legs are the size of, like, in proportion, like my whole height. So there's critiques on both ends that I think are important, and that's why I think Greta Gerwig grabbed someone who has a lot of interest in Barbie, and then someone who sits there and criticizes it and said, yeah, we all sit there, we all exist, and this movie is for every single one of us. Because yeah, again, I just don't think Barbie has any brand loyalty really enough for it to matter.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we could talk about it ad nauseum because I do feel like there is little details and little complexities here and there as far as the script, the actors, because I do feel like that plays a part too. If I'm being real, we can get into that a different day. But if it wasn't Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie, I do feel like there might be a different perception on this film, because I do feel like they help quite a bit in the marketability of their characters and of just themselves. That sells a lot. That can sell like a good 30 million worth of tickets right there, just based on their star power. But I do feel like there's just so many complexities there. But at the end of the day, I do feel like balancing every single aspect of that is a lot harder than many people may think it is, and not just falling into certain traps, and to balance out a really comedic film, because it's very comedy heavy, while also doing some themes that may be a little more complicated than people might expect from a Barbie movie. So shout out to the entire Barbie production team and team in general, because I do feel like they absolutely nailed it. The cast was amazing too. Shout out to the cast. Shout out to the Kents, man. We out here.
Well,
I'm including myself. But
Knuff, we are Knuff.
we are Knuff, man.
Guys,
I had
definitely
enough
are.
of this.
Yeah.
I'll be there being like, push, whatever that song
I
was.
wanna
Push you around.
Um,
He got progressively more what it's like, changing his tonations. He's like,
yeah.
I was
I mean,
crying laughing, man. Come
like
on
you're
now.
saying, like shout out to the Kens. We have people like Kingsley Benadir coming out of
Yeah,
a
that's my dude.
in Miami. I know he's
Yeah.
Secret Invasion now, and then he's going to be in the upcoming Bob Marley biopic.
Yeah.
And he is so damn good in
He's
this and
funny.
so
He's
different.
real funny.
He's sitting there like dancing, all like shitty.
He's so awkward. Yeah.
So awkward, amazing. So yeah, the casting all around, even for people who didn't have as much screen time, like a Kingsley Benadir, what they did with those moments that they had are just absolutely spectacular. So yeah, they knocked that out.
There's some laugh out loud moments where just glances and looks that he gives that are just so funny. Like the final beach battle when they start fighting and he looks at Ken and he's like, Ken. It's like really, really good stuff. So shout out to the entire cast. I thought it was amazing. But there was another movie this weekend that also dominated the box office and confused audiences, I think. I don't know. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. But we're talking about Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer came out in movies, in theaters this weekend and made 80 million, as I said before. Also dominated the box office in its own way. When you realize, check this out, guys, rated R. I didn't know that.
Oh
That's
yeah,
one.
oh yeah.
Christopher Nolan, and 3 hours long, about a historical figure and about like the Avengers lineup of scientists. It is not what I think a lot of people expected from the marketing. And to be fair, I skipped most of every single marketing. I always just see the first teaser trailer, but I'm almost positive, at least based off my screening, that I think a lot of people were expecting, like, I don't know, World War II movie, like bombs going off and just some action and stuff, because this was not what a lot of people expected. But either way, it made a lot of money. It's very artistic. It's very unique and original in the way that Christopher Nolan directs it versus his previous films, I believe, in the sense of color correction, color design, editing style is insane. RB3, I'm so curious. Give me your brief takes on Oppenheimer. Obviously, we'll get even deeper into it another time.
Yeah, nah. For me, Oppenheimer was first time I saw it. Did see it in 70 millimeter IMAX the opening night, Thursday night. Shout out my boy Dylan. Me and him are gonna be doing a nice in-depth breakdown on it. This guy is the most in-depth Nolan guy. He's already seen this movie 3 times, and yeah, he's gonna like go deep into it. But he hooked me up with tickets for the AMC. Also, Alex Marzonia and Garrett was at that screening too. So shout out to them. But yeah, seeing it in that 70 millimeter IMAX format, that was really dope. I'm not gonna lie though, the first time I walked out of it, I did walk out a little cold. Not because I think I had my expectations pretty much in line what I felt like the movie was gonna be. I just felt like the first time watching it, the movie is so dense, it's so full of politics, science, theory, like all these things. I'm a Nolanite through and through. If you look inside my bedroom wall, I got posters of Interstellar, the OG3 Batman trilogy, Inception, all of that. So like all of his movies I like, but I also have particular criticisms, most notably the dialogue. And I normally feel like his dialogue is not that good. So this one kind of left me a little stuffy because I'm like, this was a little stiff and a little dry. And it was very reminiscent of one of my favorite movies of all time, The Social Network. So I was like, all right, I don't know if I'm like bringing my own personal bias to it. I don't know if I'm like not perceiving and like taking this movie the right way. So let me just take a minute and like not even say anything about it, like not even have an opinion on it for a second. But then I did see it again this morning. And I did really enjoy it a lot more upon a second watch. For one, just the appreciation of the filmmaking in and of itself. This is one of the best edited movies I've seen in a long, long time, particularly in the first like 2.5 hours are like spectacular. Like it flies through like without a breeze. And there's a moment in the beginning where it's like a depiction of depression that's like so efficient and so brief, but so true as well. And it happens within like 60 seconds, but it's just perfect editing. There's other moments, obviously, where he's thinking about and imagining moments of the atomic bomb. Just the editing is on point. The cinematography was really, really great. Seeing in the IMAX 70 millimeter, I'm not gonna lie, it changed the aspect ratios a lot in between the thing. You know how he does the whole filming IMAX cameras and normal. If you saw Dunkirk, like 80% of that movie was full screen, whereas this one was only like 25-30%. So I'm like, man, I wasted all this time and money and got these tickets. Like barely seeing it that much. But then like seeing it again this morning and like regular 70 millimeter, just the full, like not IMAX, but just normal 70 millimeter, I had a much more stronger appreciation for the cinematography as well, the black and white and the color and all that. If I do have one criticism, still could be about 15 minutes shorter. You know what I mean? I think there's like 1 or 2 scenes I would nip out of there personally, but that's not a take against the movie. It's, just my attention span. So yeah, it was a great film overall.
Sabrina, what'd you think?
I really enjoyed it, and I am complete opposite of RB3 and Dylan. I'm not a Nolan hater, so I don't want to say that, but like his films just aren't necessarily my cup of tea always. I feel like we all have his criticisms about like the way he like writes women and dialogue, like RB3 mentioned. Those are things that just kind of stand out to me a lot. But this one did not have my normal Christopher Nolan issues, and I do really respect him as a filmmaker, and I think he's extremely talented. I think this might be one of his like greatest achievements as a film. The way he was able to, I love that RB3 mentioned The Social Network. I was thinking like this is very Aaron Sorkin-esque, you know, kind of like the structure, the dialogue heavy, sometimes like, I mean, it is very long. So at certain points, I was kind of like running to kind of keep up with where it's kind of going on. And sometimes when they brought in new ideas, but I don't necessarily take that as something against the film in any way. I really, really enjoyed it. I think Emily Blunt beat his women writing allegations. I think what he did with her character was absolutely incredible. Not in like the first 2/3 of the movie, but really at the end. No spoilers, but I think she has a really great scene in there where you can just like feel her power as a character, and it also kind of recontextualizes her character earlier on in the film, because she's a little bit more in the background at that point, but you realize she's kind of not. Like she really is running some stuff behind the scenes. So that and her interaction with Benny Safdie at the end, I just feel like it holds so much weight. I can see a nomination for her. Cillian Murphy, of course. First of all, incredible, absolutely incredible. As we were going through different points in Oppenheimer's life, there's just like certain things Cillian Murphy would do with his body, his face, and it would be unwavering and very distinct to that time period. So the fact that he was able to channel that throughout filming all these different times and keep that going, I think was just absolutely incredible. I really, really enjoyed this one. I'm excited to actually see it for a second time. Yeah, I had like recliner seat, snacks on snacks. I got a theater hot dog, haven't gotten one of those in a long time. But I knew I was going to be there for hours and I didn't have time for lunch. So Christopher Nolan, I think it is an extreme feat what he accomplished with that. Like you mentioned, rated R, 3 hours long, to get the box office numbers that he has so far, and that I think will continue to have legs. Really is just incredible. I think this one is spectacular. I think top 3 Nolan maybe.
I think the first thing that stood out to me is, like you said, RB3, the pacing and the editing for a 3-hour movie, because it's really different. If this was a 2-hour movie, it'd be a completely different feel if the pacing was paced like this, right? But the fact that it's 3 hours of this, or like you said, at least 2.5, I was like, oh my God, when am I going to go pee? Because I'm going to miss something, because it's like 30 seconds and then they discovered a new atom or something. And I'm just like, crap, I'm not going to know anything about this new scientific discovery if I run out to the restroom. But it really is that quick. It's so fast. And I believe it's a woman editor. I forget her name. But she directed Tenet, edited Tenet as well. But she is an editor working for him, and obviously, is it Hoyt van something?
Yeah,
for the cinematography.
By the way, you kind of reminded me. I don't know if Nolan was like actually cutting on actual film. You know, like that kind of makes me feel like if he got. I don't know. I feel like he might have been actually cutting this movie on film, like if we like with the actual 70mm, like the way I'm like thinking about it more and more, like it's kind of feeling like that.
Christopher Nolan is like, have you seen Transformers? I want to do that with Oppenheimer, and I'm like, no, don't do it. It's like a cut every 2 seconds, bro. It's crazy. But obviously it worked with this movie, and it worked when it comes to the dialogue, and when it comes to the energy, the excitement, the tension that he delivers with the film. I think that's kind of what he was going for, where he's like, how do I make this as exciting as possible? Why not, cut around it in a way that audiences will perceive the tension and will perceive that kind of intensity that's being delivered on screen. So I really do feel like that was on purpose. The second thing is, like, I'm with you, RB3. I had to really sit on this one. Obviously, as I was watching it, I was definitely into it. But I really had to sit with it with all my perspectives, because I do feel like Nolan has done a really good job of being very, let's just say this right now, because I feel like this is a better conversation than the actual film, of being very apolitical. I don't want to say like anti-political, but apolitical, where his films are always just like right down the middle. You can't really point too much out, except maybe Dark Knight Rises. But besides that, I feel like every movie he's made has been very much down the middle, kind of writing that line. And now it's like you're making a movie about the guy who made the atomic bomb. it's very difficult not to be political, but also at the same time, I did not expect this at all. Like this movie is about like the Red Scare and communism. The word communist is said like 100 million times in this movie, and I really do feel like Nolan kind of really showed his hand this time, where he really is showing you what history will show you in the future. Where it's like the atomic bomb was some wild shit, but you know what's even wilder is the people who loved it. It's the people who are just like clapping for it and celebrating it, and who like to this day are like telling you that yeah, that was awesome, America rules. And it's like that's scarier because I feel like that's kind of the point of the movie. And I do feel like there's a one scene in this movie that killed me, and I almost like audibly spoke out in the film, where they're like picking what city to bomb, as if they're like picking what to eat for like Uber Eats. And the way they're talking about it is like, yeah, well, what do you think? Like 30,000 people, 40,000? Yeah, that's a nice city. What about this one? Oh, this one's like 45,000 people. And I'm just like, oh my God. What the hell? Like, it's so horrific. And it really makes you feel like, yo, this guy is like next level disgusting. And I don't think there's any justification for what he's doing. And the entire second hour and a half of the film, he's trying to justify it. And he does his little loops and turns as far as trying to justify it. But I don't think you can talk about this movie without talking about the way Nolan views history, where he views it in a very much like, hey, you know, let's kind of wake up to what's going on even now. Because looking back at it, we're going to be like, yeah, we were psychotic. But yeah, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on the kind of political aspect of this film.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, well, for one, I thought it was interesting. I do think, yeah, like you say, it's mostly apolitical. Some people argue, you know, more right leaning. You know what I mean? In terms of, like you said, Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises, yeah.
Yeah, and well, just the whole Dark Knight trilogy in general, Batman Begins and Surveillance State, Dark Knight, all that, whatever. But then you know, this movie definitely has it portrays Oppenheimer in like a very liberal kind of way, like he's all for like these rallies and protests and stuff like that. But then, you know, it's funny. I almost feel like this movie is like a reflection of Nolan in and of himself. Like he's kind of like forced into a political position, but he really doesn't care about politics or people all that much. Like I think Oppenheimer is like the perfect example of somebody like Nolan. Like I don't really care about human beings as much. I just care about my movie. I care about the bomb, you know. And then I'll care about it afterwards. I'll care about it after the movie drops or after the bomb drops, and I'll care about people's reactions or people were hurt and the replications of it. I mean, this is Nolan. This is basically what Nolan is. Reflection on the superhero genre, right? Like he made The Dark Knight, started the superhero kick, and now it's destroying Hollywood, and he's just looking in regret. He's saying, I am become death. You know, that's what Nolan's feeling right now. And I just think it's such a stupid thing. And I think this fits in very nicely into that category of biopics from directors, those 3-hour plus biopics that are just epic but self-true to who the filmmakers are, like Spike Lee did with Malcolm X, or JFK with Oliver Stone, or you know, there's mad other examples, or Gandhi with Ben Kingsley. It's just one of those epic, like super life story. Like it's rare that you see a biopic that does a life story, a full life story, and does it in like a meaningful and entertaining way. But this movie like manages to pull it off. But I think that's why it's so apolitical, because I think Oppenheimer is not political. He doesn't care about people or politics in the same way that Nolan doesn't. And I think that's why it just feels very in that vein, in that heart. And I think that's why when I first saw it, I was kind of left cold. I'm like, oh man, where is this? What is this doing? What's going on? How do I feel about this? How do I feel about these characters? But I think that's what makes it more complex and more interesting to think about.
Yeah, what do you think, Sabrina?
I agree. It's like when you're watching this, you know, there's so many characters where you're like, oh, this person is worse than this other person, but that other person is still bad. So in this film, we have Oppenheimer, who honestly is just like so smart, and is such a genius that, you know, as he is researching all these different things, whether it be communism or all these other ideas. It's like he wants to take all of these in, but he doesn't necessarily have a specific stance. And he does kind of deal with the weight of all of this, because there's a mixture that we see in this film of like, as they're building the bomb, it's excitement, because it's like you're doing something nobody has ever done before. So of course they're excited. But yeah, it's like the second it really starts to come to a head and they do the test, and after the test where, you know, he's talking to a military member and it's like, oh, like what's happening or whatever. And he's like, well, you don't have to worry about this now. Like, this is our job now, with all due respect. So this thing he created and was celebrated for, cheered for, all of that kind of stuff. It's like, at the end of the day, he is going to deal with this weight for the rest of his life. And it's so hard, I think, because even just to put it into like a small scale of what like a person can experience, it's like sometimes you're going through something and you might know the outcome. You're like, oh, this is going to do this. But then when it actually happens, you might feel more regret now that it actually came to fruition and you're seeing the aftermath of it all. I can't even understand what it would be like to be in this position, especially at that time in history. I think Nolan dealt with it very well. I think the subject matter, that's the thing I was nervous about, of like, how is he going to portray the suffering of so many people across the entire world at this time? And I think through Oppenheimer, instead of actually seeing the aftermath of this bomb, but him dealing with the visuals, his whole world kind of like shaking when he thinks about what it would have been like to experience it, kind of showing his guilt that whole time. I respect Nolan for all that choice. I know like people kind of talk online and they're like, oh, maybe we should have seen like this and this and this represented. But I don't necessarily trust Nolan to highlight those stories and maybe deal with it. So I think he dealt with it in the way that he knows best. And I think it did service the story. And someone else down the line can tell another side of that story.
Yeah, I feel like there's a very delicate balance of trying to balance everything you said, Sabrina, where you're able to talk about the repercussions of what he's doing. But if I'm being completely honest, I also feel like, as I said before, there's an hour and a half in this film dedicated to justification of what he's doing. And it's repeated to you like almost every 5 minutes, where he's walking in a room and someone's like, should we drop this bomb? And he's like, well, we have to. And then 5 minutes later, someone else is like, sir, this bomb will kill sir. And he's like, whoa, the Nazis. And every time it's like he comes up, he'll just say the Nazis. And then we find out the Nazis are defeated. And now it's like, now what? Now what are you going to do? And then he's being like, oh, well, I guess Japan too. Japan counts too. And it's like there's a constant justification for it, where, and I don't necessarily feel that's Nolan justifying it. I'm just saying that's his character doing that in order for him to survive mentally, I guess, and not just crawl into a bed and, you know, feel awful every day for what he's doing, where he has to do it in order to finish his work. He has to find ways to justify it. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily feel like that's ever going to be enough. And I don't think anyone should feel that way. But I guess this is the whole conundrum of the movie, right? Where he feels bad. It's like, oops, my bad. I don't think that's enough, dude. It's like 200,000 people dead because of what you did, and still feeling the ramifications of it till this day. If you see and if you follow a lot of Japanese media, like I do, you still feel it to this day. And there is no justification, no matter what he thought he was fighting up against. So I do feel like there's something to be said about that. But at the same time, everything you said, RB3, I agree with. The only other counter I'll have to you is the kind of right-wing perspective that I don't feel like a lot of people are talking about because they're distracted by Barbie. So all these right-wingers, like YouTubers,
are mad about Barbie.
Are so mad about Barbie that they're not realizing that this is the biggest troll on them ever. Oppenheimer is. Like, it's a bigger troll on them than Barbie ever could be, where it literally tells them that they're on the wrong side of history, no matter what. And I don't feel like a lot of people are acknowledging that, because they're showing you how Oppenheimer is like, he's not really a communist. He was like a regular ass Democrat. Like, he even said at one point, he's like, I'm just a regular Democrat, liberal
Democrat. Yeah.
And it's like, they make it a point to show you that, but at the same time, they make it a point to show you that every single villain in this movie either celebrates the atomic bomb, doesn't care about it, or is a right winger trying to stop communism. Like those are the real hardcore, like pitchfork and horns kind of villains. Like they're literally over the top villains who are right wingers, and I do feel like this is one of the most scathing portrayals of them I've seen in a minute, where they're like showing you like this dude is a liberal and he just dropped atomic bombs.
Right.
So it's showing you how worse you have to be like, yo, yeah, we should have dropped 5 and we're the best country in the world and we don't care and F communism. Like that's worse because of what you think this is. And what he thinks it is this big weight on his shoulders. And he even says that at the end of the movie where he's like, I just gave them the tools for destruction, craziness, and he's grabbing his head or whatever. Cillian Murphy's doing the whole I regret it kind of thing. But at the same time, it's like, it's a lot worse to be in a position where you're looking at that character and being like, yeah, this guy's a P word. That guy's a P word, like Truman is in the movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
President Truman. He's like, yo, that guy's a crap baby, man. I'd kill 20 people. I'd kill 20 billion. Like that's the kind of American persona that Nolan is making fun of in this movie. And I'm like, if you're watching this movie and that's you, please feel insulted.
Right.
Because I want you to feel insulted because you're focused on Barbie because it has pink.
Right.
But now, this is the movie. Granted,
Nolan is British. So,
yeah.
you know, he does, you know, they definitely,
no, but
you
that's
know,
the thing. That's why it's interesting.
Yeah.
I had that in the back of my head this whole time because I do feel like this is his perspective on Americans, where literally the torture in Cillian Murphy's mind at the very beginning of this film, when he hears the ta, and you think it's like, I don't know, crazy drums, is stomping of people excited that he dropped the atomic bomb. I don't know if you guys caught, I mean, I'm sure you caught it because you guys are smart, but it's like one of those things where like that's that sound cue that he hears in the first 5 minutes of the movie where he's being tortured is his future repercussions of not hearing bombs, but hearing the people excited about the bombs. That to me was like, that's his biggest portrayal, I think, of negativity I'm going to see in a minute. So,
well, exactly. I mean, like, if you think about when we go back to that time period, you know, patriotism was at like an all-time high.
Yeah.
Like we need to, it's not only that they have to win, it's like we need to win by total domination. And I feel like there are still reflections of that in our society, of course, but it's now not the overall consensus, I guess I should say, where now we can criticize our own country. And before that would be looked down on. It's like, no, we are the best, because it was such hard times for everyone. That in something like this, you're not thinking of the death and destruction and everything that you are going to kind of have down your path. It's like you're just thinking about getting that win, overpowering somebody else, being the most powerful. And I remember Brandon told me about the Truman part of it all prior to us seeing the movie. I didn't know that was going to be part of the film. I didn't know what bits and pieces from Oppenheimer's story was going to be on it, because like you, I didn't read anything about it. I didn't watch any trailers. So seeing that, to me, I think is just genuinely a good reflection about how even a president or somebody, which I'm not saying Truman was a great person, but people who sometimes like you can hold to a higher standard, where it's like, yes, this person might not be openly saying terrible things like a previous president has or whatever. It's like at the end of the day, in trying times like that, things get very murky. And it's like every single president has a lot of blood on their hands, no matter who you are, no matter if you're like, if I agree with your politics. I think it's just something that kind of happens in this world, unfortunately. So I think Nolan dealt with it better than an American filmmaker could have, or something. Probably, like we had like a Michael Bay.
Yeah, well, Michael Bay. Yeah, Michael Bay. Like cutting. Well, yeah, well, you know, we saw Pearl Harbor where he's literally
like 20.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're in Pearl Harbor. He's literally cutting back to the Japanese plotting to bomb Hawaii, like as they're doing it. Yeah, like it's
not
crazy.
Michael Bay. Anyone but him. But would do a better job.
Well, you know, it's funny because like where Michael Bay would do a significantly worse job, I think Scorsese on the flip side would have probably done he would have probably went on the other side of it, of would have had the 50-50 story of like half Japanese, half American like perspective on it. But you know, like you're saying, Andres, Nolan's like pretty apolitical. He's like doesn't really. Again, I really don't think he cares about people. Like, if you watch Inception, like, that movie's like the most antisocial, basically encouraging everybody to sleep, shut up, and don't talk to each other. Like, we're only here for business kind of movie, if you watch Inception.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree 100% with you. I don't think Nolan is very aware of audiences too much. Yeah.
No, but I think that's why he relates to somebody like Oppenheimer. Like, he could be in those shoes. Like, he's gonna theorize and make his movies and make his worlds and all these things on his own path, not really care about what other people think. But then the aftermath, the after repercussions, are going to be something that sticks with him. Just with any filmmaker, any creative in general. And I think that's why, again, Oppenheimer, I think another reason why Oppenheimer succeeds, like, I went to see it this morning at 10 a.m. on a Monday, and no joke, the theater was a big theater, and it was mostly packed still. Like, it was still a lot of people in there. Like, I think there's creatives who respect a lot of Nolan stuff, but I think the science community also respects a lot of Nolan stuff. And I think a lot of like science nerds are going out and like, yo, they got Albert Einstein, they got Heisenberg, they got all the, oh my God, this is different. Like,
it was the Avengers. This movie was literally the Avengers.
Einstein showed up.
Yeah, like,
scientists.
Yeah.
They were like, yo, I got a guy. He's from the UK. And it's like, oh shit. Oh, shit. And he comes out, he's like, yo, what's up? Oppenheimer, where the bomb at?
Also, the fact that, like, not even just the actual characters, which, yes, but the fact that every single white actor in this world is in this movie.
Josh
Peck.
Yeah, Josh Peck, Josh Hartnett.
Hartnett,
like,
yeah, Hartnett, that's his name.
Roderick from
Yeah.
I Was a Wimpy Kid, Alex Wolff, Gary Oldman.
That's
So
who that
many
was.
people.
Oh my God. Because I didn't, like I said, I didn't even know Emily Blunt was in this movie. I was like, Emily Blunt, is that her in the corner? Because she pops up in that corner at first. This movie, I swear, it is literally like the Avengers, where he gets a newspaper and he's like, yo, the Nazis are building the bomb. Oh shit, who's on his team? Yo, they got Heisenberg. Oh shit. And I was like, they're like measuring their teams. They're like, yo, he's got Heisenberg at point guard. He's got this dude at center. He's got a shooting. I was like, what is this? They're like looking at him like a basketball team. And I was like, this movie's hysterical. And it's like, yo, I got a guy. He's from Boston. He's coming down. I was just like, dude.
Yeah, and they'll do like one quick zoom in shot like on the person and then cut back to the conversation. I'm like, yo, this is
like, dude, you got to talk to him. He's like, talk to who? And he's like, you know who? Yeah. Einstein. And it's like dun 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 dun. Ludwig Görance's score. It's like dun, 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 dun. And I was like, dude, this movie's insane. I have a lot of thoughts on this film. I do feel like overall it's obviously a really, really amazing film, but I do feel like the conversation around the political discourse, the moral discourse, I do feel like that's relevant, and I do feel like that's important. I think it has to be important if you're going to talk about the atomic bomb, but obviously we can do that at another day. Just overall thoughts on Barbenheimer, on the clashing of these films, on the crossing of these films, the box office, and how people might look back on either one of these movies. I'll start with you, Sabrina.
Yeah, I think, again, this is with both films, lightning in a bottle. I think we won't see anything like this in forever. Like, I know people are already talking about lineups for opening weekends. I know studios might try to replicate something like this in the future. But when you have two very celebrated filmmakers like Greta Gerwig and Christopher Nolan, we got one for the girls, we got one for the boys, but at the same time, both of them cross over demographics. And we have that A-list lineup with like a Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, Robert Downey Jr., who was incredible in this film, Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh. It's like you are hitting all the marks across the board. And just the excitement that was built up and the cultural phenomenon that this became, especially at a time where, like we talked about, like the summer box office was not where it normally is. We have people that didn't go to see movies like The Flash or Ant-Man, whatever the third, Quantumania or whatever the third movie's called, but are running out to go see something like Barbie and go watch a 3-hour movie about the creation of the atomic bomb starring Cillian Murphy. It's like, I would not expect these to be the biggest wins coming out of the box office this year if we were doing an overview at the start of the year. But I'm so happy that we did get this. I think everybody can kind of find a little something that they love, no matter what it is. Get informed. I think another thing with Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer is that maybe some people don't know a lot of the story behind the creation of the bomb about this time period, and maybe it encourages them to like go do their own research and kind of form somewhat of an opinion. So that's why I think it's like it's an important film. I think it's important to tell these stories even if they're not great, even when we show our faces and like, hey, America was in a very rough place. I know we criticize some of these other countries at this time, but we were kind of just deluded by our own patriotism and the need to win. I think it's really important. So overall, just a W for film fans. Shout out to Christopher Nolan and Greta Gerwig for saving the summer box office.
Yeah, nah. If they listen, if I was a studio executive right now, if I was running two studios, I'd be calling up Ava DuVernay like, yo, give me the Prass movie. Let's get Prass going right now. And I call up Jordan Peele like, yo, let's get if you got like a I don't know, a freaking biopic on something. I don't even know what Jordan Peele would do a biopic on. I don't know, but just like make them like line up open the weekend. I would try it. I'll at least give it one more shot just to like see what goes on. But I think it is funny because I think like they both elevated each other. Cinema needed this. Like theaters needed this. Like this summer in general has been a trying time for movies because we're tired of regurgitated franchises and sequels and superhero movies. Like we don't care about Indiana Jones 5, like we don't care about, I care about Fast 10, what I mean, personally, but the rest of the world doesn't, so it's just like we gotta stop it. It's only when you can elevate an IP or a franchise to A-list status to something that is like Across the Spider-Verse or Barbie, where it really makes that deserving kind of money. Is great. And even in a way, Oppenheimer, even though it's not like you said, Sabrina, not a lot of people knew who he was. It is kind of like marketing it about the bomb and about the history of it and about, like you said, World War II, us having seen Dunkirk and having seen Nolan kind of play in that time period, but also go for a real Oscar contender because we love Inception and all of his other films, but he's never really had a full big magnum opus kind of film. So I think a lot of people were excited to see that as well. So I think that's why I got that level of hype. And just I know a lot of people have been talking about this on like Deadline and stuff, but shout out to the 2008 Christopher Nolan versus Mamma Mia lineup that happened with The Dark Knight versus Mamma Mia opening weekend. Two classics. They kind of this time it flipped around where Nolan's number 2 and the female centric IP is number 1. But let's go. Let's do more of that.
Can I mention something really quickly? Talking about the Mamma Mia and the Dark Knight situation, it's like it makes me happy. I know we've talked about this for years, but kind of the evolution of film and film criticism as a whole and the representation of women in that space. Mamma Mia was torn to shreds. Mamma Mia is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it was torn to shreds by male critics across the board. And I understand that the movie is not for everybody, of course, but instead of being at the time where we are now, where you can let women's voices kind of like shine through and review the film, because that's what it's for. That's another celebration of women. That's women at all stages of life. When do you ever get to see in something like Barbie or in something like Mamma Mia, when do you get to see women celebrating being middle-aged or older? Never. Almost never. 80 for Brady. Shout out to that, I guess. But yeah, so that's what I want to say about the Mamma Mia situation.
Yeah, no, I think that's an absolutely fair point. And I think that's another point about what Barbie tries to do with different types of Barbies as well. I don't think they have that one scene, Sabrina, obviously, that's a very powerful scene with the old lady at the bus stop. But overall, I think they're all around the same age, the Barbies, I mean. But at least they try to diversify them a little bit. So it's not just the stereotypical blonde white Barbie, but different types of Barbies that stand out as well. So
I will say, I think it's very purposeful because there aren't older Barbies, and I think the critique about like it's almost like a self-critique with like the Barbie stuff. Like it's self-awareness of like, to our knowledge, this is like the first time she's ever seen an old woman. The fact that she's just calling her beautiful right off the bat, I think is more powerful than even seeing an older Barbie and that being normalized, because it's not. Greta Gerwig can't change that history with Barbie. We do get to see, of course, a trans woman. We get to see Barbies that are disabled. We have Barbies that have are in a wheelchair or have like just all different things. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Come along,
Yeah,
children.
for
Now
sure.
we're going to have a little
By
music.
the way, guys, those were our thoughts on Barbenheimer. Let us know what is your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of the box office, the films, all that good stuff in the comments down below. You can follow me at Squad Leader Race. Sabrina, where can they follow you?
Follow me on Twitter and TikTok at Sabrina on Film, and then Instagram at Sabrina X Monica.
RB3.
They follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Sugar Daddy Ken. Just kidding. At Director RB3. Yeah, that's where you guys can follow me at.
Either way, guys, you can follow us at First Cut TMO. You can subscribe as well. But we're going to be peacing out, so peace. Deuces.
It's either me or you. It's either me or you. You do the math.